I'm Teresa Ferguson, Director of Federal Broadband Engagement with the Colorado Broadband Office, and I will be your host for today's session. This is the final webinar in a series we kicked off a few weeks ago. The goal of this series is to shine a light on the complex issues of ensuring broadband access for all students to engage in e-learning. We encourage you to view the recordings of the first two sessions, which included great conversations about remote learning bandwidth needs and how to pay for student connectivity to the home. A few logistics for today's webinar. To prevent background noise, please keep yourself muted during the webinar. We've allowed sufficient time for Q&A after the case study presentations, during which you will be able to unmute yourself to ask questions. You can also enter questions in the chat box at any time. Today's webinar will be recorded and available at the Colorado Broadband Office website at broadband.co.gov. We are anticipating starting the webinar off today with a welcome from Governor Polis, and then introductory remarks would be provided by Colorado Department of Education Commissioner Katie Anthus. After their remarks, we will jump into our case study presentations, which will be followed by a Q&A session with our presenters. At this time, I will ask if Governor Polis has joined us, and if not, I will turn things over to Commissioner Anthus. Governor Polis, are you with us? I'll take that as a no. Commissioner Anthus, would you like to begin our webinar today with your remarks?
Great, thank you, Teresa. Yes, I would love to. Thank you for having me. And yeah, we understand the governor is in multiple places today, so he may join while I'm on, and I'll certainly turn things over to him if he does that. But thanks so much for joining, and I just want to thank the Broadband Office for hosting this webinar. This is really important to just share lessons learned and share successes across our state, because we know that it's still a real challenge in Colorado to have all of our students connected. You know, I think the pandemic has really accentuated that having connectivity and devices for our students is really now a mandatory school supply. You know, it was maybe optional before, but now not so much. We really need to double down our efforts to get every student and every family connected so that they can have access to learning and education. And these three examples you're going to hear today from some great districts across our state who have been working so hard on this, as well as with providers that they're working with, are really going to shine a light on some of the successes. You know, both the Department of Education as well as the Governor's Office and the Broadband Office have been working together to try to increase connectivity by providing grants to our school districts for either hotspots or creative solutions or infrastructure to help support connectivity. You know, we know that that's just a drop in the bucket. We do know that our issues are deeper than just a couple hotspots, and we do need some major infrastructure investment. But all three of our organizations, Broadband Office, Department of Education, and the Governor's Office, is committed to advocating for that. And so while we have some support right now, Colorado Department of Ed created a $2 million grant program. We are hoping that we will have more in the future, either through another federal stimulus package, or if the governor's budget that was just released yesterday goes through, we may have a substantial increase in that grant program. So these examples today are really going to shine a light on what works and then how we can leverage those dollars to give more district solutions. So I really just want to thank everyone. I want to also emphasize the collaboration between providers and districts. it's just really important to have our providers sort of working with us and on our side and going above and beyond to try to get this connectivity, because it's really, at this point, it's really a moral issue that we get our students access to learning. And when we can't always be in person because of the pandemic, it's critical that we have them online. So I want to thank our providers and just ask us all to double down on that collaboration and problem-solving mentality that's so strong in Colorado. So with that, I will pause and see if by chance our governor has joined us. Governor Polis, have you joined us? Okay. Well, unfortunately, he may have gotten pulled away today, but I know I work with him on a regular basis, and I know he's absolutely committed to increasing the resources to get all of our students and families committed, and I've really appreciated his partnership. So I know he was excited to say hello today, and he may jump on, but I guess we don't have him right now. So
Hi, Commissioner. How are you?
Oh, there we go. All right, Governor Polis. Perfect timing. Governor, I just gave a welcome and was just thanking you for your support on really increasing the community with our students. So I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Teresa, our Director of Federal Broadband Engagement. Thanks to you both, and I really appreciate the opportunity to join you today. I'm really excited to welcome everyone to the third and final discussion of a really important series of conversations about broadband access for students. The pandemic has changed so many aspects of our lives. Zooming into work, ordering groceries online. We do that now. We never used to. We used to do an old-fashioned thing called going to the grocery store, but we at no extra charge, just have them delivered to our home. I don't know if we'll ever go back. It's great. Besides a key from time to time to browse, and of course, students trying to get a classroom education remotely. Broadband has always been a priority for our administration before the pandemic for rural economic development. It's now an urgent necessity for families and students. And this school year is not like any we've experienced before. There are times when schools have to go to online for 2 weeks before the students can return back. And there's even a few districts that some of the students aren't even going back yet. And without internet access, our students and educators really can't be successful at reaching our students. So that's why earlier this year, I joined Attorney General Phil Weiser, announced that T-Mobile was donating Wi-Fi hotspots equipped with 100 gigabytes of free annual data usage to 34,000 households for greater internet access. And that's not alone. We've also made education funding and broadband access a key part of our budget. As part of the one-time stimulus and investment, we're proposing closing the digital divide with $160 million to connect 20 to 30,000 more Colorado households to high-speed internet. These investments will drive community economic development, make places more livable for families. It'll help make Colorado a national leader in broadband deployment and innovation, and really improve the quality of life for all Coloradans. We also propose in our one-time stimulus $40 million for education and healthcare access to better connect healthcare and academic institutions to improve the health and well-being of Coloradans. So I look forward to working with the legislature and stakeholders to prioritize the expansion of broadband across our state. And I want to always take a moment to thank our schools, our principals, our teachers, our support staff, our paraprofessionals who've worked so hard to meet the learning needs of students in this unprecedented year with unprecedented challenges. They're challenging times for everybody across every sector, but I know it's been particularly challenging for parents, for kids, for educators. Now I'm happy to turn it back over to our amazing Education Commissioner, Katie Anthus. Back to you, Commissioner.
Thank you so much, Governor Polis. And yeah, I just want to re-accentuate the commitment that the governor's office and the governor himself has put into broadband with his budget that was released. So we're excited that these types of conversations can blossom into more for more districts across our state. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Teresa.
Thank you, Governor Polis, and thank you, Commissioner Anthus. Thank you both for being national leaders and with regard to student connectivity and the importance of broadband. We know you guys have very busy schedules. We thank you so much for joining us today, but we will let you get back to the business of the state and doing what you do. So thank you, Governor Polis, and thank you, Commissioner Anthus. Take care. Now, let's get into our provider solutions case studies. We are joined by school districts and providers who work together to provide broadband connectivity for students during the onset of the pandemic and all through and into the fall semester. We have 4 case studies we're going to cover today, including school districts and providers representing both urban and rural communities. So I know we got a lot of material to cover today. We got a little behind, but we are going to have time for Q&A after all of the speakers present. So please hang in there. If you've got questions, you can also put them in the chat. We are very excited to have kicking us off today, the Boulder Valley School District and Comcast. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Moore, who is the CIO of Boulder Valley School District, and Andy Davis, Director of Government Affairs with Comcast. I think we're going to start with Andrew first. Andrew, why don't you start us off?
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Teresa, for the introduction, and I'm happy to be here today to share our stories on how we're getting our students connected, and in particular, our connection with Comcast. Before I get into that detail, I want to just highlight that this problem is very difficult, and we've had to go with 3 different methods to get our students connected. And even with that, we still have small pockets where we don't have connectivity. But we are using hotspots from Verizon and T-Mobile. We have got a public-private partnership with a company called Livewire. This is kind of a unique thing. There's another webinar that we did with the Colorado Broadband Office on October 21st, where you can find more information. But just in a 30-second overview of that, we are basically trading real estate at our schools to allow a private over-the-air internet provider, Livewire, to put their antennas on our schools. We backhaul them on non-E-rated dark fiber, and then they set up their communications through that mechanism. They give away internet, high-speed internet at 25 megabit down, 5 megabit up for free to all of our qualifying students. And so that's a program we're expanding and is really our go-to as we continue to solve this problem. And then the third of the 3 is our relationship with Comcast. We're very happy that Comcast created a district contract capability where we can actually pay for internet essentials. That's their 25 megabit down, 3 megabit up service for students in need. It's $9.95 a month. And we as a school district are able to cover that fee. We actually have partners, 501(c)(3) that supports us to help us pay for that. But the bottom line is, because we can pay for it in kind of a bulk way to Comcast, it has simplified the process to get those students connected. I know we have very limited time here, but I do want to just talk about challenges persist, because we're all continuing to work this, this problem and solutions. I want to point out that I'm very happy we're partnered with Comcast, because there is a player that is not even at this webinar right now that should be. And that is CenturyLink, who did away with their Internet Basics, their $9.95 solution 3 years ago. And so even though I give Andy Davis at Comcast a hard time, I am so thankful that he's at the table and he's part of the solution that we're trying to do. And then the last thing I'll mention is that upload speeds are what we're now focused on. The 3 megabit upload speeds are simply not enough if you have more than 1 student in your household. We see this with the T-Mobile hotspots and Verizon hotspots as well. And we're working with Comcast to try to get those upload speeds adjusted, or to work with us on data to really get to the root and how much bandwidth is needed to systemically solve that problem. I'm going to drop into the chat Common Sense Education and Boston Consulting Group, who just released a paper called Closing the K-12 Digital Divide in the Age of Distance Learning. It has a lot of good information, including those upload bandwidth speeds that are turning out to be inadequate in a lot of cases. All right, I'll turn it back over to you, Teresa.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Andy, you're up. You probably need to take the mute.
Thanks so much. I had to do it. No, thanks, Teresa, and thanks to Andrew. I mean, he's absolutely right. We're good partners and have been. Andrew and I have worked together now for several years. He is both a proponent of what we do, but he's also critical and helps us sort of pass along good feedback from the field that helps us to continuously improve and evolve what we do. So I think everybody on the call is probably familiar with Internet Essentials, but I do think, just kind of giving you a sense of where this Internet Essentials partner program, the sponsorship, what we formerly had called sponsored service that Andrew's talking about, kind of where that came from. So when the pandemic hit, I mean, one of the things I think that was beneficial was that this program, Internet Essentials, had existed since 2011. So 9 years of a program that has evolved, improved. There's great infrastructure there to be able to meet the needs of school districts as this demand kind of blew up. And we saw obviously big uptake on Internet Essentials, but also some really, more unique needs from each of our school districts and also some of our nonprofit partners. Really what the challenge was is there still are some households that even at, $9.95 a month, that's still burdensome to a budget. And so what some of the school districts wanted was, is there a way to kind of do this on a sort of bulk basis? And that's what, like I said, formerly called sponsored service, but what we now call it is the Internet Essentials Partner Program. And what that does is any school district, nonprofit partner, government agency, philanthropic interest that wants to, to basically sponsor a group of households, this program allows them to do that. So figure if it's at least 25 households, looking at a time of like 6 months, 12 months, that's how we get this thing set up. And so Andrew and BVSD were the first ones in Colorado, actually in our Mountain West region, to jump on and say, this is the solution that we want and that we need. And so grateful that we got that opportunity. Now, the two that I work most closely with is Boulder Valley and then also Jeffco Schools. The Jeffco Schools Foundation is an Internet Essentials partner as well. In both cases with Andrew and BVSD, but also with Jeffco, there's kind of an interesting way that they've arranged it. So for Andrew, Impact on Education, their nonprofit partner is a funding resource that helps to fund it. In the case of Jeffco Schools, it's actually Lockheed Martin, who was looking for a way to help support the COVID-19 response from Jeffco Schools, and thought this partnership, kind of Comcast providing Internet Essentials and the Internet Essentials Partner Program, Jeffco Schools Foundation sort of managing it, and Lockheed Martin providing funding to help support it. So kind of an interesting combination that allowed us to do that. But yeah, I think, at its core, like I said, we now have 17 partners, 17 partners who are part of the Internet Essentials Partner Program here in Colorado. I mean, that's everywhere from Adams School District, Weld County, Greeley Evans. We've got nonprofit partners out of Sun Valley. So we've got a really wide set of folks who've taken advantage of this. So always looking for more. If there's folks who find that this is the way to help solve it, if you're a school district, a nonprofit, et cetera, certainly get in touch with me. We're happy to kind of dig into that. I would say it is where we have our footprint, so that's critical. We have to obviously be able to serve that area. But I'm actually also happy to kind of report on this too, that as of last week, we are now fully servicing Kremling, Colorado. So we've extended all of our services there. We've been a limited video provider there for years, but we were excited to now provide them the full suite of what we do. So there are even some rural communities where we can do an Internet Essentials Partner Program. So that's it on my side. But again, thanks to Andrew for the partnership and Teresa for the opportunity.
Thank you, Andy and Andrew. Great remarks, and you guys kept to the time, so I appreciate that. Next, we're going to turn to the Southeast and John Saunders, who is Chief Business Development Officer for CCOM, and David Armstrong, who's a teacher at Los Animas School District. John, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Teresa. So Southeast, what's kind of interesting with CCOM in the southeastern corner of the state here, when the pandemic was just hitting, we were just coming off the heels. We had just finished a build out of 3 different communities that were actually funded by a DORA grant. So Los Animas, Springfield, and Hawley. And we literally had just finished up Los Animas when this hit. And so David, of course, is from Los Animas there. So what we found, we reached out to the schools immediately when all this started going on, because we were hearing these horror stories of people not having enough bandwidth or not having any connectivity. So we worked with each of the schools to prioritize who they told us needed the connectivity. There may be some cases, because we also have, besides the fiber, we have fixed wireless in a lot of these communities also. So we would work with somebody, maybe a family that has both parents that were at home working and multiple students that needed high upload speeds. To Andrew's point, we moved them over to fiber, recoup the radios so that we could get them other places. One of the problems we ran into that a number of other providers also experienced, the stuff from China was not coming in. A lot of the equipment, there were shortages because of everybody wanting to hook everybody up. One, the equipment wasn't coming in, and two, there was just a much higher than expected demand. So we had to prioritize and work with the different schools. There's actually one of the areas that's separate from those three. We had fiber close to the schools, and there were some teachers there that really needed it. They had some teachers that were just out of college, so they probably didn't have a lot of cash and money on hand. They were just using their internet off their phone, off their data plans for surfing at home, but that wasn't going to work out for them to do that and try and teach from. So we worked with those schools, got fiber connectivity into those teachers so that they could have enough bandwidth to work appropriately. Again, a lot of just coordination with each one of those districts on a very granular level of this person needs it, this teacher needs it, this family needs it. And so we work with them as needed to make all of this happen and put it all together.
Thank you, John. That's perfect. Now, David, I know you're in the middle of a classroom and you have one of your students or two of your students there with you. David, can we turn it over to you now?
Sorry, I'm navigating between two computers. I'm not muted. I'm good right here. So I'm navigating between two computers. I've got the presentation going on my Promethean board, and I've got my class in front of me. It's a college speech class, and I have two students that are going to add to what I'm already having to say. John, thank you. So when the pandemic hit, he talked about timing being everything. We had just gotten enough Chromebooks to go one-to-one. So once the pandemic hit, we got some guidance. We handed out Chromebooks to everybody from 3rd to 12th grade. And we set expectations for that digital communication in the elementary school. It was one meeting for at least 1 hour a day with their classes. And in the junior high and high school, one meeting per week per class through Zoom, Facebook Messenger, whatever. We had to have one quality live contact with every single one of our students each week. But we had to use whatever means were necessary. We wanted to focus more on social, emotional well-being instead of academic, and that served us very well. However, my first live interaction did fall flat. I had about 50% participation, so I used my online gradebook, and I called each one of those other 50% to figure out why they weren't there. They did lack quality connectivity. For the most part, they did have internet through CCOM or CenturyLink or whatever was available, just not enough juice to fuel a live stream. And then so with such a number of students struggling, we reached out to CCOM, and the district provided $3,000 worth of hotspot connections. And we lended those out to the families that were in need, but those hotspots weren't a save all. Down here in Southeast Colorado, the cell signal is not always reliable. So the students who struggled connecting also struggled because their location, where they were in the county, in the city, whatever, didn't provide a strong enough cell signal for quality internet to take advantage of those hotspots. Similarly, the broadband that CCOM connected, while it's wonderful, my family and I got under the wire just before everything hit, but it's only within the city limits. So those that live outside of the city limits still struggle to get that quality access to internet. So the district made everyone aware of the other possibilities, sitting outside of the school and logging in through the Wi-Fi that's there, through the internet that's there, sitting outside of Dairy Queen because everything was still shut down, and sitting outside the library. And I did have a number of interactions with students in those places. While this seems logical, it was still an issue because it was a solution for both students and staff. And we as a staff needed to be on a whole lot more than the students did. And this access, while it was available and wonderful through CCOM, it was still costly and unreliable outside city limits. Similarly, the Comcast free internet and the things that were free and provided and all the hubbub on the news weren't available primarily in our area. Our school, 90% of our district qualifies for free and reduced lunch, and we serve a 36% poverty rate, which is 3 times the Colorado average. So this data encapsulates not only the students trying to maintain, but also teachers trying to teach and help their own students stay academically afloat. So that broadband bill, even if it's $10, kind of like Andy alluded to, is better spent on groceries, fuel, rent, electricity, or car payments in many of our students' homes. Broadband, as far as many families are concerned, isn't a priority, nor is it a choice within their budget. Currently, we're on 50% capacity at the high school. Freshmen and sophomores come on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Juniors and seniors are here on Monday and Wednesdays. When students are not in attendance, the teachers should have a flipped model where we have instructional videos that are posted with some sort of activity to engage and engage that understanding. And then the rest of the lesson plan is implemented on those face-to-face days. We don't have any live classes on those remote days. One, because there are some classes that I have students both days, Monday or all 4 days. And then students still, for those aforementioned reasons, cost, availability, location, don't have access to that quality connectivity. So I have 2 students now that are gonna piggyback off of my very, very vague summary. Megan Melendez lives within the city limits, and she does have access to that broadband. And then Shelby Eck lives on a ranch outside of city limits and relied on a number of resources to get by last semester. And if we end up going remote this year, she'll probably end up relying on those same resources. Megan?
My name is Megan Melendez. At the beginning of the pandemic, mandates were set advising everyone to stay inside and away from one another. All students were sent home from school expected to do their work from the computer. Despite everyone's effort to complete schoolwork, a lot of students did not have access to quality internet connectivity. Because of this, a lot of students, including me, opened up our homes to friends in need. Group sizes ranged from 4 to 8 students at a time, with a range of expectations from freshman English to college to composition, all doing their best to collaborate to graduate. On occasions, whenever we were not able to meet at a house, we had to make portable connections available. We would bring our Chromebooks and phones to wherever someone didn't have any available connections. This meant driving 15 miles south uptown on dirt roads in my car, getting a total of 3 flat tires to provide my friends the same connectivity. Having the luxury of broadband connectivity helped my friends and I tremendously during our period of remote learning. Without my connection to broadband internet and portable hotspots, my friends nor I would have had the ability to complete our online work.
Hi, my name is Shelby Eck. Living out of the school district and out on a farm or a ranch or out in the country really makes it hard to complete schoolwork. My little sister and I had to literally fight over the internet when we were on Zoom meetings. Having more than one person on the line at a time caused cutouts on both her line and mine. I'm really grateful that I had teachers with patience and that would work with me through the internet difficulties. Without great internet connection, I had to work harder to complete the schoolwork assigned. Taking a college class and missing the lecture made it really difficult for the teachers and I in the long run. I spent many hours trying to catch up with that I had missed and figuring out a solution to maintain a greater internet connection. I usually relied on phone calls and text messages from the teachers to complete their assignments. Working on assignments outside of Los Angeles' broadband makes it almost impossible when more than one person is on the line. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, David, Megan, and Shelby. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. We're now going to turn to our 3rd case study, which features Mike Felicissimo. I knew I was going to mess it up, Mike. I'm trying. Mike is the Executive Vice President of Vieira Wireless, and Brian Amak is Director of IT with Morgan School District. Mike, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Teresa. That was a valiant effort. And I accept all pronunciations because otherwise I'd never have any friends. But I want to tell you about Vieira Wireless and what we did. You know, a little bit about us really quick, because you need to know that to understand. We're a rural cell phone carrier. So, you know, you heard people say, oh, there's not always cell phone coverage out there, right? We're everywhere east of I-25 in the entire Colorado Eastern Plains and throughout the whole San Luis Valley. And coverage is important because we're in towns where typically there's more cows than there are people half the time, if not all the time. And so when the pandemic hit and schools started calling this guy who's joining me, Lance McAllister, who's my business and government salesperson, you know, there was an urgent need immediately. Hey, we need access to broadband internet. And so we didn't have MiFi pucks. That's really what you need is it's a little device, not a cell phone, that interacts with the cell system and provides the connectivity and provides like a mobile hotspot. So we quickly grabbed a low-end cell phone and we put a Wi-Fi hotspot app on the cell phone, and we developed a price plan. And we learned that the schools also had a financial challenge. So it wasn't just access to a network, it was the cost. So we came up with a price point that was very low cost, and we subsidized the devices 100%. So we basically are giving them away. And Lance went out and boom, he was in business. Within a week, he was out calling on schools. He's going to tell you a little bit about how many and the success we had. But we were out providing this service kind of like overnight. Throughout the summer, we refined this product. We found an actual MiFi puck that we still subsidize. We call our product Connect Ed. And it's at a very attractive price point for the school systems. And we've done literally almost 1,500 lines of this so far. And there was one other group of customers, though, who still couldn't get access to broadband internet. And lots of times to the schools, you know, the schools didn't have the budget, or there were students who still needed to have it because the schools couldn't provide it. And so I just came up with an unlimited cell phone plan. It's an add-on line, like, you know, you can buy this unlimited line, that unlimited line. We call it Student Unlimited. It's $10 a month. It comes with a free cell phone that has a hotspot app on it. And there's no credit check. You need to have a parent who's over 18 be the signer on the account, but it's basically a no credit check, unlimited access to broadband internet product for $10 a month. And gosh, that's gone crazy too. In Colorado and Nebraska, since June, we've sold over 3,500 lines of that. So, you know, we're currently now into this pandemic, what, 6, 7, 8 months, and we've got about 5,000 lines where we're serving students with these products. All across Eastern Plains of Colorado, San Luis Valley, and Nebraska. So Lance, why don't you give a little bit more breath and mention some of the names of these places for folks?
Okay, hey, I'm Lance. So, you know, it was kind of a weird situation. We knew what was happening. I don't think I realized how fast it was happening. I woke up one day and was watching the news, and all of a sudden my phone started ringing. And hey, you know, do you guys have something? Well, we really didn't at the time. So my phone's ringing off the hook. Long story short, now we've got, I think 40, almost 40 school districts that I've helped get connectivity to their kiddos. I can't say enough how fast this came about was insane. But we worked, we got a phone out to them for now. We've got the product now. It sounds like it's working very well. So, I mean, we do what we can do, right? It all kind of hit us really fast, and hopefully we'll all get through it, so.
Well, thank you, Mike and Lance. Let's talk to Brian about the IT director of Morgan School District and hear his side of that, receiving those services. Brian?
Good morning. Fort Morgan is in the northeast part of Colorado. We're a district of 3,200 students. We have a 65% free and reduced lunch count. So it's not a real rich area of Colorado. The city of Fort Morgan has many options for internet, both cable and wireless. But it's when you get to the edge of the city where that goes down dramatically. The Morgan County School District uses Vero to bridge this gap. Currently, we have 70 hotspots that are deployed through our grades in our school district. During the 1920 school year, was a transitional year for the Morgan schools. We were transitioning our district to a one-to-one model from grades 1 to 12. When the students arrived in the fall, we had devices ready to go. We started transitioning into blended learning. We had pilot groups learning our new learning management system. We had groups going to conferences, taking coursework in blended learning. And then March happened. All of our plans of managed build out kind of exploded. We went into a full blended learning, remote learning environment. Teachers in our pilot group were meeting online with other colleagues, quickly learning the tools needed to continue the students' education. Devices were deployed out of the schools and into the homes, but we needed internet access for those students that didn't have connectivity. A lot of our rural students with students needing that access, a lot of the parents didn't have access. Vero was our first and only thought on how to get them access. Vero has spent a lot of time out in Northeast Colorado expanding their growth of access. So they were our first call. I was able to call Lance. Like he said, his phone was ringing continually. Within a day, I was able to start getting those hotspots out to our students. Our district kind of labeled our support as front porch tech support because we spent a lot of time driving out into the country and delivering those hotspots to our students and getting them up and on the system. We were able to have hotspots with multiple students in a household be able to connect to one hotspot. It worked out fantastically. We're very thankful for Vero. Without them in this emergency, we wouldn't have been able to give our students the support that they need right now, but also for their continual support for the district. We're kind of their hometown city, so it's nice to be able to find their headquarters real quickly. Thank you, Teresa.
Well, thank you, Mike, Lance, and Brian. And Brian, you just gave me a new term that I love, front porch tech support. I come from a rural little town in Missouri, and I love that term. Thank you for sharing that. Our final case study today includes Aaron Macarelli, Senior Director, Sales Engineering for Visionary Communications, and Jimmy Poindexter, Technology Director for West Grand School District. So Aaron, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, gosh, such an inspirational story so far. This has just been great. Just a quick note about Visionary Broadband. We're a small ISP that mostly focuses on the rural areas. And our story is somewhat similar to some of the other ones. Basically, in mid-March, Jimmy Poindexter from the West Grand School District, which is specifically Kremlin, Colorado area, he reached out to us and indicated that they were moving students to a remote learning program at that time. He, like a lot of the districts, he asked if there's anything that we could do to help. And at the end of the day, there were just a lot of students who did not have good internet options at home. As a company, we put our heads together and came up with an educational package, which was basically a heavily discounted and contract-free 50 by 5 internet package. We waived the truck rolls and installation fees. We provided a managed router to each student just to make sure that the students had a consistent and good Wi-Fi platform at home. Our customer was actually the West Grand School District, and the students were not billed for the service. And as was alluded to earlier, and I'm sure everyone recalls, things were just shut down so quickly. And with everything, everybody else in the community was shifting to a work from home model, and everyone was looking for new services and upgrades. At that time, we were really scrambling to keep up with demand in the area. Our concern was that the students who didn't have a good broadband option, like everybody else was concerned with, they would just be left behind. We understood that for these students, this was essentially their lifetime during a very scary and uncertain time. And personally, as a parent with 2 students in Jefferson County, we get to see firsthand just how it changed our kids' lives overnight. And it was heartbreaking to think that there were students who were totally isolated out there. So basically, Visionary Broadband made student connectivity our #1 focus. We did everything we could to work around the students' family schedules to ensure that we could turn things up quickly. And we essentially moved our normal residential and business customer installations around, rescheduled just so we could make sure that we did same-day turn-up for student requests as they came in. Since then, we've built out a fiber to the home network in Kremling. It's great. We offer gigabit speeds. At the time, we deployed a fixed wireless technology, and that really made for a cost-effective and fast solution, and enabled us to remove a lot of the last mile considerations at the time and get things ramped up quickly. At the end of the day, I'd have to say that the #1 thing we did from a process change perspective was simply to make sure that we prioritize the students. And for us, it was, as parents, it was easy to do.
Thank you, Aaron. It's over to you now. Jimmy?
Hey, hi. So first off, thanks for having me on. I'm glad I get a chance to kind of tell our story and our process here. So for us, I want to say it's about mid-February. I was approached by my superintendent, Dr. Darren Peppard, and he had asked me, he said, okay, this is getting serious. We don't quite have the issue in our county yet with COVID, but we need to prep for this. So we sent out a survey to our parents and asked a couple tech questions. One, do you have a device? In the event we have to do this, do you have something reliable besides your cell phone? And the second question was, do you have reliable internet? And initially the survey came back and there wasn't too much of a need. But we found out very quickly once, March rolled around and our shutdown actually happened, it was a lot bigger than we thought. And some of it wasn't so much there wasn't internet. It just was not, with 4 kids in a house, you can't do 4 Zoom meetings at a time and mom come home and try to do things as well. So we started by reaching out. I reached out to Aaron, as he said, and, tried to get something going there for our in-town and in-service area students. That we did still have some issues with that, just because we are very rural. Our town is 1,500 people, and the majority of our people, our students, live outside of the town on ranches and things like that. And we encompass quite a bit of surrounding area as well. So for that, we ended up using hotspots from T-Mobile. But I believe, this has changed a lot for us because we were not a one-to-one district in any way. I mean, we had a couple carts here and there for classrooms, more grade level, that they would share between the 2 classes. This did force a lot of thinking on our end, and based off the data that we had, we are now 1-to-1, 3rd grade through 12th. We are actually waiting on devices to complete kindergarten through 2nd, so we will be fully 1-to-1. This has hit us kind of hard. We were shut down in March. We did not return physically to school, in-person school. We were completely online. We did a lot of that through Google. We had no other systems. We just did the best that we could to try to make it. Currently, we are now, our high school is in their 2nd quarantine, not the entire high school, the entire high school initially, but not in this time. And without this access, some of these kids would not have the ability to do the work that they are trying to do. Grades would be affected, and some of them even were, coming into March and, out of the end of the school year. But really with the data that we were given, we were pretty nervous about how this was going to work. I mean, in Kremling at the time, there was not very much for internet, connectivity. Visionary was fairly new into the neighborhood, and we were, like I said, able to work with Aaron and Visionary and get what we needed.
Thank you, Jimmy. It sounds like you guys were really it was a confluence of bad things and good things came all at once, that you were able to sort of pivot very quickly and look at the resources in the community and identify how to connect your students. So I really thank you for sharing your story. It's unique in that it's yours, but you've heard it sounds very similar to what so many school districts. You're on the western part of the state, and we've had the eastern part of the state, and we're hearing the same thing across our state. So thank you, Aaron and Jimmy, for that. And we really appreciate all of the presenters articulating so clearly the difficulties that students and teachers faced during this period, during this time. I would love to open it up now. You guys did so great. You left plenty of time for Q&A. I'm going to open it up for question and answers. If you have questions, audience, please unmute yourself and ask your questions. Please don't be shy. These guys have, they've all put their time in to come in and talk to you about what they've experienced. They are the experts. And if you've got questions, please jump in. All right, I think we have a shy group, Megan. Megan, do we have some questions that you want to pose to our panelists?
I don't see anything in the chat yet, but I have a question. All of you spoke about responding really quickly to get the solutions in place, and I'm wondering what fell through the cracks and what new challenges popped up in the fall that maybe you weren't expecting and you had to make a second shift, or things like that.
Yeah, Megan, I'll take a stab at that. I think we were feeling pretty good in the spring, in that we had the majority of students connected, with the exception of pockets up in the mountains. But when we returned in the fall, it started to become clear that we were having issues with grainy video from students' homes, dropped calls, things that were more in line with the low upload speeds that I had mentioned before. So we pivoted, and even in some of our internet essential homes, we're now issuing hotspots to supplement, and basically saying, okay, student 1, you get on internet essential, student 2, you get on this hotspot, so that we kind of spread the load across multiple providers. It definitely caught us off guard, and we're still chipping away at making sure we get it all resolved.
Brian and Jimmy, did you experience similar sort of, readjusting that you had to go through from the spring to the fall, as Andrew was just pointing out?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go. Our big thing is, I don't think any of us realized how bad some of the cell service is here. A lot of, like I said, we use some T-Mobile hotspots, and just didn't realize how many of our students lived in areas where there's virtually no cell service, no connectivity. There are no ISPs that go out there. I don't think we realized going into our closure in the spring how bad that really was for us. Thinking now we're trying to find other solutions for that. I know Visionary they've opened up some of their areas and where they're trying to get connectivity, and we're looking for different providers to try to help out with that now. In the moment, though, it was quite, like you said, the rush to try to get this set up and in place before we did come, to our several month closure.
Thank you, Jimmy. How about you, Brian? Any retooling you had to do from spring to fall?
We did. We had parents that had internet access into the spring, but then due to job losses and different things, they no longer had internet access. So we then had to go in and help provide them with hotspots. The only other thing that we've had with our front porch tech support is guiding them to making sure the hotspots were closer to windows to be able to get the highest speeds. We had the unlimited internet, so we've noticed our devices are being used by parents after the kids have finished. So 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, you can still see there is still access on our devices. So I think a lot of parents are now using those devices and the Wi-Fi for their work.
Well, I appreciate that. So now I'm going to switch over to the providers for just a moment. Andy, Aaron.
Do I get to speak?
Oh, absolutely. Who do I have? Is that David? David, of course. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know if you were teaching the class, David. I do apologize. Yes, please jump in.
Oh, no, it's okay. So one major transition that we've made is when we had, and I said this when I spoke, but we aren't having live interaction, Zoom, full class meetings this semester since we're 50% capacity. I mean, if we go remote, yeah, something will have to change there. But we are, since we're 50% capacity, they're free to upload and do things at their own speed. So there's not the requirement for broadband still there, but the requirement that you have to be face-to-face and have that connection for that extended period of time, and that reliability, we backed off on because we still have parents who are not purchasing cell phones, period. They're not purchasing internet, period. And we got those hotspots through Viero last semester, and the last gentleman that was speaking, I can't remember his name because it's not up here. The last semester, we noticed that a lot of those too were being used for more personal instead of academic use. And the parents were taking those and using those for their own personal instead of providing them for their students to work. So we kind of backed off on providing hotspots because they weren't being used the way that they were intended. So we've kind of backed off of that requirement a little bit and been far more face-to-face and really use that time that we've had with our students far more effectively, I think.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. And I thank you so much for taking time out of your class schedule today to talk with us. And thank you for jumping in. Andy, Aaron, John, and I'm sure I'm forgetting someone else. What did you feel like was the biggest pivot for you between the spring and the fall? Was it really the bulk billing of having bulk billing available to the school districts to be able to secure connectivity for students and teachers, or was it something else that was a real shift for the companies from spring to fall?
Yeah, I'll weigh in real quick. I'd say we had a version of the Internet Essentials Partner Program called, like I was saying before, it's called Sponsored Service. So we had kind of the initial structure in place, but I'd say once the pandemic really kicked in and we were seeing the demand for sponsored service, it became clear that it had room to be an even more robust program. So I think what we've been doing, and certainly feedback from Andrew and his team, Matt Elder and Michelle Leffler, they have really helped, I think, at least from my vantage point, have helped us to kind of share some feedback as to how we can continue to make that that Internet Essentials Partner Program work even better. The other thing maybe I would say when you're thinking about how things change spring to fall, the observation maybe I'd make from some of our partners is having to think about this as much more of a long-term solution, right? That I think everybody in the spring thought we'll get through the spring and summer, we'll do it maybe a shorter term period, and almost everyone's had to extend out to the end of the next school year, and maybe thinking that it's something that they might need to maintain beyond that, because certainly, as I think Andrew said, it shines such a bright light on the need. And now that school districts, and I think all school districts were trying to close that divide and knew that there were issues of digital equity and inclusion, but now that it's so stark and they know where that need is, that need may not necessarily go away just because the pandemic goes away. And so I think what we're working with our partners is to think about how do we get them through the school year, but maybe there's a need for a longer term partnership that still delivers what the IEPP program does. So that may be one change.
Thank you, Mike and John. I know we got questions.
Oh, I was going to
right?
say before we jump to the other providers on that question, Andy, there's a question about, which I think is a bit related. What is Comcast doing regarding system upgrades to improve the new load models of oversubscription in neighborhoods? I don't know if that's a quick answer. If it's more extended, we could post an answer on the website following the webinar.
Yeah, and Megan, would you mind repeating that? I'm not sure if I followed what the question was.
Oh, sorry. What is Comcast doing regarding system upgrades to improve the new load models of oversubscription in the neighborhoods?
Yeah, and I can provide a sort of a quick answer on that, and I'll throw some additional information in the chat. One of the things I would say is that from a network perspective, we've done $12 billion worth of network investments since 2017. So that pre-investment in network, I think, has held up enormously well. I mean, we've watched massive change in utilization of the network as we change to a work from home, education from home environment. So an enormous amount of, like I said, the investment was there. We've done on the network side, whenever there are pockets, because when you think of how broadly that utilization changed, there have been pockets of the network where we do see a change in demand and change in capacity need. And so our teams have been working really closely. Actually, I'll continue to use Boulder as an example. Boulder, the city of Boulder, was incredibly responsive to, I know, not just to us, but to other providers as well, when we needed to get, kind of emergency permits or speedy permits to be able to get out, add capacity where it's needed. So I feel like while that again, massive change in utilization, but network has held up well, and we've had good partnerships in the community to be able to add capacity where needed. So I'll throw up some additional information in the chat that just kind of tells the story about the network, both investment and the changes in demand, and folks might find interest in that.
Aaron, John, or Mike, someone want to jump in on how you pivoted from the spring to the fall, and what you didn't expect, what was different?
Well, that was a good question. That's a great question. And as Jimmy alluded to, we did not know at the time that so many students were widespread. It's so easy to provide decent options in the city center, but that little pocket that's 10 miles out, in the hills, that proved to be the challenge, and that really brought to light that issue. And we've been really doubling down on growing network to the fringes, where where it's more difficult. And so that's kind of what we've done through the fall here to try and help out in that regard in the rural areas.
Yeah, the same for CCOM. We did a lot of upgrades when we saw it's like, wow, this is overloading the rural areas, especially that whole pattern of the traffic patterns change of how utilization. So we did a number of upgrades to try and get that out there, more people out there with faster connectivity.
Mike, anything from you?
Yes, two things quickly. The first was that we needed to move off of cell phones with a Wi-Fi hotspot. We needed internet protection controls for students, kids, to make sure they weren't going to the bad places on the internet. And so finding a good, fast, low cost MiFi puck from a company called Franklin Wireless with SIPA compliance and lots of dashboard controls for IT managers so that schools, could create groups and control access and things like that. That was a big one. The second one was, even with how many schools we served and how many lines we provided, there was still a ton of demand out there because there were places where schools couldn't provide every kid with, access to the internet, and they were still going without. And so the Student Unlimited Price plan, which gave the students, that cell phone that was subsidized at a $10 a month price with no credit check, it was 3 times more popular, if you will, in terms of volume than the first program was. So low income is a huge challenge. Yep.
I really appreciate it. I know we're running a little bit over time, but I would invite you to stay with us just for a few more minutes. I think we can wrap some things up. I saw a good question in the chat. Megan, could you provide that one for us?
Yes. So the question is from Arlene Salyard. She says, Andrew spoke to the upload speeds and how the current standards are a barrier to families needing multiple connections. Are there any changes we might see in the near future on the service provider side to upgrade services to meet these current demands?
And I think she's really talking about upload demands there, guys. We're really seeing this. It's a monumental shift from the spring to the fall in needing that upload capacity.
One of the big things that we found, so with fiber, we can make it a symmetrical. You can make it 100 by 100 or whatever. And there's some other technologies out there that do that. Wireless is a little bit harder, like our fixed wireless products, to do that because you got a limited spectrum. But fiber is a really good answer for that, because it will definitely get you as fast as you want and asymmetrical. So you've got all of the upload that you need for this. It's symmetrical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I maybe just would add that, we, as Andrew talked about earlier, we're working with partners like Boulder Valley Schools to take that feedback from the field and sort of figure out, what do we need to adjust? What do we need to change? Are there, is it issues of the network, or we know that there are challenges sometimes just within Wi-Fi within the home? And are there sort of some things we can do on a technical side to help improve that, the performance in the home? So I think one of the things we're talking about is, how do we get more data? How do we do some more investigating to really understand that problem and see what kind of solutions we can put together? So definitely something we're digging into.
Aaron, how are you guys approaching the upload, the pivot to upload and upload applications that are very upload intensive?
Yep, absolutely. So we've actually built out a fiber to the home, fiber to the business network out in this particular area. And with wireless, as was mentioned earlier, you've always got that challenge, but we're all about doing everything we can to, we spend almost all day, every day trying to figure out the ways to bolster uploads. We've also, in a market like Kremling, upgraded the uplinks in the town. We've just seen such tremendous growth, and always looking to be one step ahead where we can, watching the network as closely as we can and making sure the upgrades are done in a timely fashion.
So I think the industry is recognizing uploads, applications that require upload capacity. I think it might be here to stay. And so we're going to have to look at solutions for the long term, I think, as Andy pointed out, that will support those needs. Unless, Megan, do you have any other questions, or should we give it a moment again and see if we have any of our attendees that want to ask a question? I know everybody's being kind of shy today.
While you're waiting,
I don't see any more.
While you're waiting, I could say that, in addressing this upload, fiber is fantastic, but it's cost prohibitive, and especially in very rural areas, to wire up every single farm and household is almost impossible. So you're going to need wireless networks. Wireless networks are challenged by three things, spectrum availability, backhaul, and number of towers and radio capacity. Those technologies are always improving. You've heard 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G. That'll go on into the future, and speeds and upload and download capacity will increase over any given wavelength. But really, it all boils down to one thing, and that's where you come in: money. The fastest way to get more capacity, upload speed, is to have more towers, more spectrum licenses available, more radios, et cetera. And the subsidization of rural areas is critical. It has been forever in the rural space, and it will continue to be. And it's especially brought to light with this crisis that just jumped up out of nowhere and really put a point on the need for rural broadband and closing the digital divide.
Well, I can't thank all of our panelists. I feel like we have 8 of them. You guys have all been great. Thank you for your time. Thank you for spending your time with us and providing these great insights that you've experienced. I also would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank Governor Polis for his remarks in our webinar, and thank you to Colorado Department of Education Commissioner Anthus for jumping in and saving us at the start. So a big thanks to everyone. We couldn't have done this without you. Want to remind you that the recording of this session will be posted on our website, along with the recordings of the previous student connectivity sessions, and you can find those at broadband.co.gov. Thank you again for joining us today. Until next time, be well and goodbye.